In this lecture and this session, we will continue with Chapter 7, Arrays, and we will continue with basics of arrays. In the previous session, we discussed that we need arrays to solve some complex applications. For example, we need to go with the numbers above and below, so we have to save the numbers. We discussed how to create an array, and also we discussed how to access the elements in an array. In this session, we will go with also the basics of arrays, and basically we'll discuss how to create an array, how to initialize, how to output, and how to do the reading of elements. So let's assume we need the following. We need to create an array of size 10. We will initialize all the elements to 10. Then we need to do output, and then we need to do the reading of the numbers. So I will remove all of these and we will do them step by step. So the first step is I'll have integer. This is the data type of my array. I will have a bracket because I need an array. I will call it A, and then I will say new integer, and then we will say bracket 10. And this is an array of size 10. I will start with a small array, for example, size 3, and then I will increase it later on, just when we make sure that we know the concept. So out of this, it means I will have my array, and I will have 3 locations, location 0, 1, and 2, and all of them, this is of type integer. Now the second step I have to do is I have to initialize the arrays that we have. So for example, let's assume I need to save the number 10 in each location of my array. So the way to do it, I can say array equals 10. And we know this cannot be done, because if you need to save a value inside your array, always you have to mention in which location. So I have to say this should be in location 0, and this will be accepted. And then you have to say A at location 1 equals 10. And the last step is A at location 2 equals 10. But if we have very large array like of size 100 or size 20, this will not be an easy step to repeat all of these statements many times. So if we have an array, we don't write separated statements. We have to have a kind of repetition. Because here, if you can notice that I have the following. I have a bracket, and then bracket there equals 10. This is the same thing repeated for each statement we are doing. The only small change we have is the number, is the index. So here I'm having 0, and then I have 1, and then I have 2. So this is the differences between, this is the only difference between all of these 3 statements. So what I will need something similar to this. I will need a for loop such that I will have to initialize how can we move from one statement to the other. Inside the for loop, let's open a bracket and close it there. Inside the for loop, all what I'll have to do is a bracket equals 10. So I'm just having the same thing that is repeated, and I'm having it just like inside the for loop. Now, instead of saying between the brackets, I'm saying 0 and then 1 and then 2. I'll use a variable which is I. So I should be moving 0, 1, and 2. That's why inside the for loop, I will declare integer I, and I need the initial value, the starting value, to be as 0. So that's why I'm saying at the beginning, the value of I should be as 0. Now, how can we move? I should move 0, and then I should be 1, and then I should be 2. So that's why we know that within the for loop, always we start with value, then we should have a condition, and the last one of the for loop as I have to say, is it a plus or minus minus? So here I will have to say I plus plus because I'm moving 0, 1, 2 till the end. Now we have to know what is the condition we have in between. The condition should be satisfying such that always I have to move from 0 till the end of the array. So I have to say that the value of I should be less than the size of my array. How many elements I have in my array? I have 3 elements. So 0 less than 3, true. 1 less than 3, true. 2 less than 3, true. If I will reach I equal 3, 3 is it less than 3, false. So I know that I will move correctly from the beginning till the end. Let's have just the brackets. We don't need the brackets actually because it's only one statement, but if you prefer, you can just keep them within your for loop. Let's apply this for loop just to make sure that it will give us a correct result. So I will start from the beginning. I equal 0, so I will be 0. So this is the starting point. 0 less than 3, true. What I have to do, I have to say a bracket I equals 10. A brackets I, so a bracket, what is the current value of I is 0, equals 10. It means I will have this statement. Now remember, we are within a loop, so we have to continue and go to the for loop. When you go with the second iteration, you have to increment I. So I will be incremented, so we are done with this. I will have the value 1. Again, double check the condition. Is it less than 3? 1 less than 3, true. Inside the loop, you will have to say a bracket I equals 10. And currently, the value of I is 1. So a of 1 is 10. So I will have a of 1 is 10, which means this statement will be true as well. Go again to the beginning of your for loop, increment I, and then I less than 3. Increment I, it means I will be 2. 2 is it less than 3? True. Inside the loop, a of 2 equals 10. So this is a of 2 equals 10. Now, if you go back again, increment I will reach a value of 3. And you will reach a condition I less than 3. 3 less than 3, false. Which means this is the end of your for loop. So here what we did, instead of writing 3 statements to do the initialization, I have only one for loop and I have only one statement. Even if the size of my array is 100, still it will do the same job. So if I need here, for example, the size to be just like 100, simply we will just change the size here as 100 as well. And it will do the same job, starting from location 0 till the end of the array. Each element should have the value as 10. Let's take this back to 3, and this is as 3 as well. Now, instead of saying I less than 3, I can write it in another way. So I can just, let me copy this. We will write it down, and we will see how can we do a small modification. So instead of saying I less than 3, I will say I less than a, which is the name of my array, dot, and then length. The meaning of this statement is this is an array and get me the length of my array. So it means what is the length of your array, and it will give you 3. 3 is exactly the same thing you are using at the top. So you can say for I equals 0, I less than 3. This is correct. Or you can say I equals 0, I less than a dot length. And remember, a is the name of your array. And this is correct as well. Usually we prefer using length because it will calculate the length and we don't have to write it each time 3. Because simply here, if I change this array size to 100, I don't have to change anything if I say length, because automatically length will be 100. But if I'm using a specific number, it means I have to go for each loop and I have to change it. So let's have this one as our initialization, and let's make sure that all of them are correct. So I'll remove this and I'll just keep the one that we are using, length. So we know that starting from 0 till the length, all of them will be initialized. Now the next step we will be doing is output the elements of your array. We need to do something with the output. So I will have to have on my output screen, for example, I will say values equal, and then I will go for each element and do the output. So the first value is 10, so I have 10. The second is also 10. The last one is 10 as well. How to do the output? We know that if we need to do output, basically we'll just have to say system.out.println, and we have the value inside. So here, if I just say simply A, it will not be accepted because A is the name of the whole array. So I have to say A bracket, and I have to mention the value. So I have to say 0, and then I have to say 1, and then I have to say 2. So instead of writing the statement 3 times, I will write it only 1 time within a for loop. So I will copy the same for loop we have at the top because I will use the same concept. We will start from I equal 0, I less than length, which is in our case here is 3, I plus plus to move from one element to the end. And instead of saying A of I equal 10, I need to do output. So I will say system.out.println, and between the brackets I have to say A bracket, and I have to specify the index. So here I will just say I need the index as I. So the way it will be doing, it will start from I as 0. So I, the first time will be 0. Is it less than the length, which is 3? This is true. So what do you have to do? You have to say system.out.println A of I. So this means do the output of A brackets. What is the current value of I, which is 0? Current value of I is 0. Inside 0 I have 10, so I will output this 10. Start the loop again, do the second iteration. Increment I, so it means I now will be moving to the second location, which is I as 1. Inside the loop, A of I, which means do the output of location 1. This is location 1, inside location 1 is 2, so this is the output. We will go to the other loop, increment I and check the size. Increment I, so I will be 2. 2 is it less than the length? True. Do the output of A at location 2, so we will have a statement similar to this, A at location 2. This is location 2, inside location 2 is 10, so this is the output we have. The last time when you go within your for loop, I will be incremented and I will reach a value 3. 3 less than 3 false, it means you have to stop your loop. So your I was moving from 0 till the end of the array, 0, 1, 2. And each time you say system.out.println A of a specific location, and that's why you are printing the elements inside the array. Now let's assume I have exactly the same for loop, the same output, But instead of saying a bracket I, simply we wrote only I. What is the difference between the first for loop and the second for loop? The first for loop, it will output a of I, which are the elements inside the array. So it means the output will be 10, 10, and 10. The second loop, it will output I, which means it will output the index. So it will output 0, 1, and 2. And usually we need the output of the values inside the array. So a bracket I. We don't use I by itself. We don't need the index. The index is only to help us to move from one element to the other one. So remember this small mistake and try to avoid it in your assignments and your exams, because otherwise you will have different output. You will not reach the required thing. Now what we need to learn as well, how to do the reading of elements. So let's assume we need to do the following. And instead of having output, I will have to ask the user for values. So I'll say, please enter integer values. And if the user says 5, 20, 15, what I'll have to do, I have to take this number and I have to save them in my array. So the first one should be 5, and location 1 I should have 20, and location 2 I should have 15. Now, if we need to do the reading, always we need a scanner. That's why the first statement we have here as the declaration of the scanner, and we call it as input. Now, to do the reading, let us remove this because this is not correct. To do the reading, usually what we say, go to the scanner input equals input dot next integer. We read the number and then we save it. So if I have a variable x, simply I will say x equal, but we don't need any variable like x here. We need to save in the array itself. So I will use the same array, but now we know, I think all of us, we know by this time that we cannot use the array name by itself. I have to combine it with a bracket. So I'll have to say bracket. And between the brackets, I have to mention in which index. So the first time, save it in location 0. Second time, save it in location 2. The last one, save it in location, the first time is 0, and then 1, and then 2. So instead of using a specific number, I will use a variable I, and I will include it in a for loop. So let me copy this loop because this is the same thing I'm using. And we will close the bracket. So here I'm saying from 0 till length, read an integer and save it at location a of I. And I need just one message before the loop, enter integer values. So I will have here system.out.println enter integer values. Similarly, for the previous one, the output, if you need something before the output, before the loop, just simply say system.out.println, and for example, we will say values. So this will be printed before you enter your values. So this is for the output. And the last one we are doing is for reading. So here, the first I'm saying enter integer values. So this is the output we get. For I equals 0 up to the length, read a number and save it at location I. So if I is 0, go to array at location 0 and read the number. So read a number and save it in which location? Array at location 0. So array at location 0 will have a new value, which is 5. And then continue within your loop, increment I. So I will have a new value, which is 1. Still within the length, read the value and save it in the new location. Read the value and save it in the new location, which is 1. So in location 1, we will have the value as 20. Continue with your loop. I will be incremented. I will reach 2. 2 less than length, true. You have to go inside and you have to read a value and save it in the array. We will read the value, we will save it in the array, A at location 2. Increment I for the last time we will reach a 3. 3 less than a 3 false. So this will be the end and you will not save any numbers anymore. So by this loop, you are reading numbers and you are saving them in your array. So what we did, we created an array. We used for loop to initialize. We used also another for loop to do output and the last for loop to do the reading. So the concepts we have to remember here is always when I do the creation and dealing with arrays, that I have to remember arrays will be mostly combined with for loops. So here when we started by saying array equal new integer 3, to do the initialization, I have to go one by one from 0 till the end of the array. That's why I need a for loop from 0 till length. If I need to do the output, again, I need another for loop from 0 till length. Similarly, if I need to do reading, again, we have to go from 0 till length. So this is a concept we have to remember. Go from I equals 0, I less than a dot length. And remember that always you have to mention a brackets I. So a bracket I, it means the value inside your array, whether you are doing initialization, input, or output. Also, we need to remember that within the for loop, we can simply just use the length as it is as a number, like a 3. This is correct. Or we can refer to the name of the array.length, and this is even better in many cases. Because if I have here the same program, but instead of having array of size 3, we decided that our array actually should be of size 100. If your array of size 100, it means you will have index 0, 1 up to the last index, which is 99. So the only one change you have to do in this program is instead of saying 3 here, I'll just have to say the length as 100. And nothing to be changed in any of the loops because all of them that we are using length, which means all of them automatically they will be as 100. So it is usually advised if you are doing your assignment, if you are doing a practical quiz, if the question is asking for array of size 10 or array of size 100, you can start with a small number like array of size 3. And if it works properly, you can move to, and all the loops are working properly, given that you are using a.length, then you can change the array size to 100 and it will work as well because you are applying the same concept. Within the lecture slides, within the lecture notes uploaded on a Blackboard, you will find a file named arraydemo.java. It will do the same things we did in this session of creating, initialization, output, and reading. The small thing that you have to be aware of is that the array is of type double, and it will hold temperatures of 7 items. So the array size is 7. So you have the same practice, but instead of array of integers, you will have array of doubles. And the size is 7. So please go and download the file. Try to play with the items, the reading, the output, so you get the sense and the practice of arrays. Just to recap about the length of the array, if I have this statement, integer bracket list equal new integer bracket 3 system.out array.length equal list.length. So it will output what is the length of your array. So you will have array length equal 3 because the creation you start with is a 3. Then you can have a loop. Inside the loop you'll say list of I, which means because it's an empty array, all of the elements will be 0. But remember, you cannot assign a value to the length. You cannot say list length equal 10. We cannot do this way. All what I can do is I use it in a for loop in order to make sure that we are moving till the end of the array. Also, one of the things we can do is we can do initialization at the time of the creation. For example, I can say double bracket list equal 3.3, 15.8, 9.7. So what we are doing two steps. The first step, I'm creating an array of type double. The second step, I am saving the values or initializing the values. So here 3.3 is the first element, 15.8 in location 1, 9.7 in location 2. Now you will notice that we didn't mention the size of the array, but automatically because I'm having only 3 values, the length will be 3. So if you have system.out.println array length, what is the length of the array list.length? It will give you as a 3. And you can also use it within your loop for I equals 0, I less than list.length. What are the elements? List of I. So going from 0 up to the length, which is a 3, you will output the elements, which are 3.3, 15.8, 9.7, which are saved in your array. So in many examples, especially output examples, you may find that they create and declare the array at the same time. And if you use this one, it means your array will take the length as of your initialization, which means that if I simply here remove this one, it means here the size will not be 3 actually, the size will be 2 because I have only 2 elements. And this is the difference between the initialization of the two arrays.